A very good afternoon to all of you, all the participants in this virtual lecture series programs. At the outset, I compliment Dr. Nageshwar Rao in particular and AUSEP in general for having undertaken a very interesting program of lecture series on topics of interest, especially in the present scenario. And I am a student of language and literature, but I am not going to speak language and literature per se. I have chosen a topic which is general in nature. I titled it Pedagogy in Transition, Content to Innovation. And from school teaching to, say, university teaching and research, we all have undergone different experiences as far as teaching and research is concerned. And as teachers, especially engaged in higher education, we are concerned not only of imparting knowledge to the students, but more importantly, we have also keep an eye on what changes are taking place and in what manner and how we, the teachers, each one of us, need to change in tune with the transformation taking place in the society in terms of science, technology, society, polity, or whatever. And it is in this context that I have chosen this topic. You are all very aware. Let me once again make it very clear that I am neither a specialist in pedagogy nor in transformation, a dissemination of knowledge, but I am trying to put certain things together in order to make it relevant to teaching in the present context. Now, teaching per se, teaching particularly has undergone a great change, transition, as you all are aware of. And teaching alone cannot be seen in isolation. Teaching, of course, is imparting of knowledge and information, content, and therefore the content and knowledge have to do with the preservation of knowledge and dissemination of knowledge. Knowledge and teaching go hand in hand. After all, be it at school level or college level or university level, when we stand in the class and teach, or virtually when we teach online, what do we do in teaching actually? It is knowledge that we either generate or transmit from us to the students or from the textbook printed material to the students. This is what we do. Therefore, I see a close relationship between pedagogy and knowledge. We are using the word pedagogy, which is a technical term, which is nothing but theory and practice of learning. Pedagogy is especially a term dealing with education, and we as educators should also be aware of this term pedagogy, which is simply theory and practice of learning. And now this pedagogy or teaching and learning is concerned, there is a close relationship between pedagogy as well as knowledge. Now a great change has taken place in the field of knowledge and technology. As you can see, for instance, if invention of fire is taken as the first form of knowledge, for example, by the early man, which took place almost 1 lakh years ago. At that time, the early man, it was not invention. Fire had always been there. It was only controlled use of the fire, because fire, even before nobody can invent fire. Fire was part of the nature, and controlled use of the nature fire perhaps took place about 1 lakh years ago, which was instrumental, which was very instrumental in creation of knowledge and changing life in general. Because fire helped in cooking food, fire helped in technology, fire helped in knowledge, and fire that was how fire has played very important role. And now 1 lakh years to the present 2021st, you can see on the right bottom, you can see Virgin Galactic Unity 2022 flight Yesterday itself, we made it possible. We, in the sense, those who are involved in knowledge and dissemination of technology. It was just yesterday that a commercial space tourism took place, and it was made possible for the common man to, not common man, for a layman to enter into space. Now, from invention of fire to launching into space, great many changes have taken place, which is a great leap forward. A great transition has taken place. It's not a simple ordinary change. It's not a simple invention, a great deal of invention. And during these 1 lakh years, each and every educator, each and every researcher has played a very, very important role in the teaching and dissemination and generation of knowledge. Now, you see, when it comes to teaching, after all, we transform or disseminate information or content from the teacher or from the material to the learner. So it all started with what we call, I called it a palm to palm, palm leaves. Earlier, it was especially a technology used in India. Knowledge, whatever it was whether it might be an epic, Ramayana, Mahabharata, or it might, whatever it was recorded in the form of a palm leaf. Knowledge, whatever was available to the early man, they recorded in the palm leaf. And now, presently, we record and make use of knowledge now digitally, which I called palm top, which is nothing but say a mobile. So from palm leaf to a mobile technology, which I call palm to palm, knowledge, preservation of knowledge, because without knowledge, we don't teach in vacuum. It is knowledge that we teach. It's knowledge that we generate, and it's knowledge that we disseminate to the student community, which is why from preservation of knowledge in palm leaf to preserving and disseminating knowledge to palm top, that is a mobile, a great deal of change has taken place in the preservation of knowledge and technology. Now, if we apply this to teaching, now since we are dealing with pedagogy, in the beginnings, whether it is in the Eastern countries like India or Western European countries like England and America, in the beginnings, teaching had always been teacher-centric. As you can see the picture, it is Indian characteristic Vedic form of teaching and learning, where a teacher sits on the high pedestal, and a very, very small group of students, like 5, 6 to 10, selected group of students sit around him, and the teacher imparts knowledge, whatever he knew, whatever is considered knowledge from his point of view. It's all from a teacher's point of view that teaching has taken place in the beginnings, when teaching per se started. It's not merely in India. In Western Western tradition of teaching also was basically teacher-centric, be it during Plato's period or Aristotle's period. It was the teacher who was considered an omniscient personality. A teacher was an all-knowing person, and it is his mind was the repository of knowledge, and therefore whatever he knows was the knowledge. And of course, they tested it with wisdom. The teacher tested his knowledge with society. The teacher tested his knowledge with practicality. Only after testing and verification, he considered it as knowledge, and the teacher at that time used to teach, and he was the omniscient person, and the students were recipients of knowledge at that time, which in the modern day pedagogy was called tabula rasa. Mind was empty, like a sponge or a clean slate, and it is on the clean slate that we start writing. Similarly, tabula rasa is a concept in which mind is like a sponge, and when the teacher provides, the sponge absorbs. So this was basically teacher-centric learning ever since the beginning of a formal system of teaching. Now, in this method, you do not find innovation, you do not find interaction. It's merely transmitting. It's merely passing the content, knowledge from the teacher to the student, and that too from the teacher's brain, teacher's perception, teacher's understanding to the learner, which was basically teacher-centric. Now, unfortunately, this teacher-centric approach continues till the day in India, whereas in Europe and West, as the technology developed, the teacher-centric teaching has been replaced by various other methods. But in India, in spite of various innovations and transformations taking place, we still continue our teaching to be teacher-centric. As you all know, a characteristic teacher, an average teacher, what does he do? You can imagine, or most of you, or most of us, what do? We prepare well for the class. It may be teaching of a poem, a novel, or a drama, a subject of mathematics, physics, or information science. A teacher prepares, goes to the classroom, stands on the high pedestal, and then goes on disseminating, making use of the blackboard. And as we teach, what do the students do? Students seriously take down notes. Everything that is uttered by the teacher is taken down by the students. And this is what actually happens in the Indian characteristic classroom, average classroom. Teacher teaches, student listens. This teacher-centric approach, which started very, very long ago in the absence of any other methodology, teacher-centric approach, which is called lecture method. In ELT, English language teaching, we call it lecture method. Lecture method, teacher-centric methods are one and the same. And they were started in the absence of any other methodology. But in spite of presence of various new methodologies like interactive method, with other methods, we in India still continue teacher-centric learning, which is the bane of teaching, which is why we don't, our teaching doesn't result in, say, innovation, which is why, as you all know, most of the inventions and discoveries obviously have taken place in Europe and the West. Name any invention, discovery, of course, few exceptions may be there. Few inventions and discoveries might have taken place in India, but a majority of them, based on science and technology, have taken place in the West and Europe. That's basically because of innovative pedagogy. They shifted from teaching-centric to teacher-centric to other approaches, other methods, which is why teaching became innovative elsewhere in the world and teacher-centric in our country. And from teacher-centric, what happened? Knowledge got preserved on the palm leaves. I was referring to palm. The palm leaves technology was almost 5th century BC, which is also very pretty old, 2,500 years old. It was in 5th century BC that Indian we should call them scientists, that they invented palm leaf technology and preserved. Later on, paper was invented. From palm leaf, a great leap was invention of paper by a Chinese scientist called Sir I Lu in 100 BC Common Era. With invention of after paper, invention of printing press in the 15th century by Gutenberg, and then Caxton's development of printing press subsequently has resulted in a great deal of transformation of preservation of knowledge and pedagogy. Now, what does this printing press to do? What does it have to do with pedagogy, with teaching? As you all know, suppose we all go to the classroom, we ourselves improve our knowledge with the help of textbooks, prescribed textbooks, reference material, and then we enrich our knowledge, go to the classroom and teach. After teaching, we give some references to students. The students in turn do not merely depend upon our classroom teaching, but they refer to textbooks, they refer to reference books, and then they improve their knowledge. This is how invention of printing press, first by Gutenberg in 15th century, and the same was developed by Caxton. And example, palm leaves were very, very limited. There were 1 or 2 copies, 3 copies, maximum 5 copies, 10 copies, and they were not even circulated, very limited. Only privileged people had access to palm leaves, which means to say education was the prerogative of privileged people, very few people. There was a monopoly of knowledge in olden days in the 5th century BC till 15th century, till 14th century, there was a monopoly of knowledge. A very few people, group of people had monopoly on knowledge, information, technology, and it was not democratic. Invention of printing press made it possible. Knowledge and teaching became democratic. And you all know that if a book is printed, it's printed in 1,000 copies, 1,000 copy, a million copies, and then everybody, whoever was in a position to afford to buy a copy, knowledge is in his hands. That's how printing of invention of paper and invention of printing press put together democratized teaching, democratized knowledge, democratized technology. It is no longer a monopoly. Everybody had access to knowledge and technology and information. That's how pedagogy became material centric. From teacher centric, pedagogy became material centric. Whether or not a student, whether or not a teacher teaches well, whether or not a student learns from the teacher, the student is reassured that he can always learn from the textbook, from the reference book, from the library. So this is how the teacher's monopoly or monopoly of knowledge creators had been questioned and challenged by the students now, because the students have now access to textbooks and reference books and journals. Now they can read and learn on their own. So that's how teaching has transformed from teacher-centered to material-centric. And that too, with the invention of a digital printer in the year 1993, very recently, as old as say 20 years, 25 years, now it became far more democratic, far more affordable, far more economical. Anybody can have access to knowledge. Anybody can now have access to learning. This is how pedagogy, technology, innovation have made a great leap forward, and no longer it's a monopoly. And you all know invention of say internet, which is called WWW. It was Tim Berners who invented internet, World Wide Network. It was an accidental invention actually. Most of you may be aware of it. He was actually not into invention of internet. His interest was in trains, controlling the trains. He converted his room into rails and trains, and he wanted to control the trains. For that, he was experimenting on electronics. Subsequently, when he was working on this, he had to work on different computers, not one computer. Interestingly, he himself made a computer out of an abandoned TV, old TV. Out of old TV, he made his own computer. That was how he made 4 or 5 computers, and for each program, he was working on a separate system, separate computer. And then suddenly he got an idea, what is this cumbersome and time-consuming fact of working separately on each computer? And then he was trying to network these 3 or 4 computers in his own room. This networking ultimately resulted in World Wide Network in 1989, which is once again 3 decades old. Now you know the result of his invention. He was such a man. He had not claimed any patent. Internet has no patent now. Anybody can contribute to internet. Anybody can download from internet. It's a community property, common property. So that's the greatness of Tim Berners, and his invention of internet, as you all know, has resulted in tremendous revolution in knowledge generation, knowledge transmission, knowledge consumption. Knowledge is just at a fingertip, especially when teachers of my generation of most of you, after the class, we had to run to the library to get hold of a book. The book may or may not be there. We had to physically struggle to find a particular book or buy a book. And now you all know knowledge is just at a fingertip, just at a click of the button. You have thousands and thousands of pages of information which Google searches for you and keeps ready before you. It's all made possible because of transition in knowledge, transition technology. So from printing press to worldwide network is a great leap forward, which has close relationship to teaching and learning, as you all know. And you all teachers who are present in this virtual talk, we must all be conscious of what we are teaching, because the students are smarter. They are born into technology, whereas we were not born into technology. The students, our student generation from school to university, they are born in technology. They know how to use technology adeptly, and whatever we teach, they verify, and they have more sources of learning other than learning from you and me. So therefore, I never say that teaching has the online teaching is a substitute, but then the student always looks for a better alternative. If he can find better information in the internet, why would he pay attention to you and me? Unless and until you and I are giving them something precious, something useful to them, they are not going to pay attention to what we teach in the classroom. Therefore, we have to mind our teaching. We have to update ourselves. We have to find ourselves relevant. Only then the in-person teaching in the classroom will continue. Otherwise, in-person teaching in the classroom is very shortly going to make room for what I am going to call next artificial intelligence in the pedagogy, which is not an exaggeration. AI stands for artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is nothing but machine thinking for an individual. Now, gone were the days when machine was doing work for the human being. Robots were doing labor work in the industry. That was once upon a time. But now the knowledge and technology is being applied in such a way that artificial intelligence is being applied to all walks of life. You all know that robots perform surgeries. You all know that robots are now driving cars also. Tesla car. Elon Musk invented a car in America, which is called Tesla car, which is self-driven. It doesn't require a driver. In most of the operation theaters in Europe, West, and in India also, surgeries are being performed by robots. That is artificial intelligence. Thinking machines. Artificial intelligence is nothing but thinking machines. Now you might be wondering whether a human being does the job perfectly or a robot does the job perfectly. Let us illustrate the example of surgery, for example. Surgery is performed by a doctor on the one hand, and surgery is performed by a robot on the other hand. Between these two, which one is more accurate? Which surgery is more successful? Surgery performed by a doctor is more successful, or surgery performed by a robot is more successful? Or, to put it simply, cars driven by robots on the one hand, cars driven by drivers on the other hand, which is less accidental? Research shows that human intervention, cars driven by human drivers are prone to more accidents. Surgeries performed by doctors are less successful. Surgeries performed by robots are more successful. Cars driven by robots are less accidental. Which means to say that artificial intelligence is going to be precise, more accurate, and perfect than job done by you and me. And the same is going to be, artificial intelligence is going to enter into teaching also. There you can see in the picture a robot making use of the board, green board. In the developed countries, Western European countries, the practice is already there. Artificial intelligence is already being implemented. And I have just mentioned there that First of all, any technology, when it comes to practice, the first beneficiary is business. Business people make use of technology first. It's at a later stage that it is used by education institutions. Pedagogy makes use of technology at a very later stage. Same is the case with artificial intelligence. The research shows that, a prediction shows that by 2040, we are in 2020 now, after about 17 years from now, 18, 19 years from now, 50% of the jobs will be done by artificial intelligence. Whether it is a surgery or a war or driving or teaching, 18 years from now, 50% of us are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. There is a term called cyborgs. Cyborgs is nothing but implanting a chip in human body, and then that chip thinks for us. We think with the help of the chip and we become more efficient, more perfect. As a result, future is going to be the age of super intelligence. And now already machine learning is there, machine translation is there, machine conducted examinations are there, machine evaluation is there. Artificial intelligence is going to be the order of the day in about 2 decades from now. Now, what I am trying to impress upon you with my presentation today, from transformation from palm leaf to printing press to digital technology, digital printing. Similarly, from teacher-centric learning to learner-centric learning with invention of a printing press, and from learner-centric learning to artificial intelligence in pedagogy. As far as pedagogy is concerned, teaching, learning, and preservation of knowledge have changed very drastically, and therefore these changes are going to determine the role of a teacher, that is you and me. We, the teachers, of course, we are in the late 50s and we are going to stop teaching in about 5 to 10 years. But those of you who are youngsters, young teachers, young teacher participants in this online program, lecture series program, must and should realize what is going to be your role in the classroom after about 10 years or 20 years. Unless and until we change ourselves, unless and until we understand our relationship to society, technology, and classroom, we are going to be obsolete, irrelevant, and automatically the students are going to choose what is relevant to them. It's in this context that we have to understand new education policy adopted by Government of India last year. Dr. Kasturirangan has presented a well-studied document in the name of New Education Policy. But before that, very briefly, I'm not going to take much time. All the new education policies, beginning from Macaulay, after which in the independent country we had Dr. Radhakrishnan's commission. Then later on we had a new education policy by Ramurthy Commission. Then the present new education policy. Almost all the new education policy documents are vision documents, but then they are only ideal documents, never realized. Let us take Dr. Radhakrishnan's commission report. Not even 20% of it is implemented 70 years after independence. Ramurthy's commission, submitted in 1986, which was also called New Education Policy, not even 10% of it is implemented. Education policies documents are vision documents, ideal documents. Governments keep changing, and then none of it is implemented thoroughly. But let's quickly take a look at present new education policy vis-a-vis higher education. Dr. Kasturirangan envisages skill-based education, that is education not merely knowledge-based, but is skill-based and technology-driven. These are the two operative terms of Kasturirangan's new education policy. Education should be skill-based from school to university, and then technology-driven, as a part of which he envisages that by 2022, that is by next year, he envisaged that every student should have a computer. You can imagine whether it is possible or it's a mere vision document. By 2023, in 2 years from now, all the teachers must be professionally competent. I see with my fingers crossed. By 2024, they are planning to establish Ivy League model. Ivy League model is nothing but IIT type of institutions. Just as we have IITs, IIMs in India, in America, they have Ivy League models. Our counterparts of IIT, IIMs are called Ivy League in America, topmost innovative institutions, which are going to be materialized in 2020 by 2024. In another 3 years, he wanted Ivy League model in India, which I'm again doubtful. I'm not critical, I'm not criticizing. And then by 2035, GER, gross enrollment ratio, has to increase from present 30% to 50%. And by 2040, that is another 2 decades to go, all the colleges in the country, we have about 5,000 colleges in the country now. These colleges have to become autonomous colleges. The present autonomous universities have to become, the present autonomous colleges have to become deemed universities, and the present deemed universities have to become universities by 2040. That is the brief structure of new education policy as far as higher education is concerned. And what is going to happen as far as the degrees that we award to the students is concerned. He has envisaged that a degree should be very flexible in the sense anybody can enter into 3-year degree. They are going to make 3-year degree into 4-year program. Anybody can enter into degree program. You can enter into 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year. Multiple exit, multiple entry policy. It's called multiple exit, multiple entry. A student who joins in degree course, 3-year course is going to become 4-year course. A student who joins 4-year course, if he is bored of a degree, he can quit the program immediately. After 1 year, he will be given a certificate. You can see there. If he studies 2 years of degree, he will be given advanced diploma. If he studies 3 years in the degree program, he will be given a degree. And if he studies 4 years, he will be given a research after 4 research degree. This is going to be a degree program in the country. This is what you see: certificate after 1 year, advanced diploma in 2nd year, bachelor's degree in 3rd year, and bachelor's degree with research in 4th year. And this envisaging of multiple entry, multiple exit in higher education will be possible only unless and until we change our mode of teaching. Right now, till say a year ago, till the emergence of epidemic COVID-19, especially in India, we were conventional teaching and learning, that is classroom-based teaching. When lockdown was imposed in the month of March 1920, immediately the education institutions took over to online teaching. It took no time, but of course with limitations. But then, in order to be very effective, we need to change our pedagogy from teacher-centered to intersectional pedagogy, which is nothing but blending of online learning and in-person teaching. In-person and online teaching is called intersectional pedagogy. And then that's basically because if we prepare for a lecture for 1 hour, no student is going to pay attention to you, because psychological research proved that concentration span of a learner is from 8 minutes to 12 minutes only. A student will not be able to concentrate beyond 12 minutes, which is why the students who are going to be millennial citizens, clever citizens, students, we need to change pedagogy from in-person classroom to intersectional pedagogy. That's basically because online teaching has picked up momentum in the country. I'll give you quick statistics of what's the percentage of students taking up online programs. As far as the CBCS credit program is concerned, new education policy envisages that 20% of the students are now using online program. It should be raised to 40%. And in SWAYAM, we have a SWAYAM and MOOC program in the country. 36% of students are pursuing online education in liberal arts. Only 16% are pursuing education in sciences, and 13% students are pursuing online education in engineering, which is very, very less as far as that is concerned. And we have certain limitations in the country. it's not immediately possible to switch over to online teaching, blended teaching, or intersectional pedagogy, because let us see the limitations. 75% of the population doesn't have internet at home. 89% of the population, the student population, I'm not talking about general population, I'm talking about student population. 89% of our student population do not have devices, that is either a laptop or desktop or a mobile. You see, 76% of students do not know how to use computer. 74% of students do not know how to use internet. And as far as humanities students are concerned, 81% of them do not have computers, and 54% of humanities students do not have internet. Let us see engineering also. 30% of the engineering students don't have computer, and 44% of engineering students do not have internet. In this scenario, how are we going to change the pedagogy into intersectional pedagogy, and how are we going to materialize Dr. Kasturi Rangan's vision document of new education policy? And all this has to be understood in terms of our achievement, with which I close my talk. You see, any teaching, any pedagogy, any learning, any innovation, any research ultimately is determined by what are we contributing to the field of science and technology, innovations, discoveries, and inventions. Let us take a look at patent tally. I have statistics of 2019. Total overall patents registered by 2019 were about 14 million. 14 million patents were registered all over the world, out of which 3.1 million patents belong to America, 2.4 million patents belong to China, 2.1 million patents belong to Japan. And what's our contribution of patents by 2019? It's not in millions, it's not in lakhs, it's in thousands. It's simply 5,629 patents registered in India by 2019. Merely 5,629 patents out of 14 million patents. Now this figure, 5,629, is the best index of where we stand today. 5,629 patents in spite of premier institutes in the country. I'm talking about IITs, I'm talking about IIMs, I'm talking about 14 or 16 central universities in the country. The contribution of the premier institutes put together, apart from premier research institutes put together, is 5,629. This tells us where we stand today. This tells us and what needs to be done in future. In my view, this minimal figure of patents tally, very negligible tally of 5,629, is basically because of lackadaisical pedagogy that we adopt. The pedagogy that we adopt in the school, in the college, in the university doesn't inculcate the questioning spirit, the innovation spirit. Students are always there. Potential students are always there, but it's basically because of lack of appropriate pedagogy that we lag behind in teaching, learning, generation of knowledge, and dissemination of knowledge. It is from this point of view that we, the teachers, have to realize what we are, where we are, and what more needs to be done. So with this brief introduction, I close my talk and I leave it to the organizer. I'll answer one question raised by Sharmila Deshmukh. Sharmila asks, "Sir, in an age of artificial intelligence, how can teachers leave a remark?" So I was referring to role of artificial intelligence in teaching. Let me make it very clear. I have not exaggerated. artificial intelligence has already entered into classroom, and whichever is effective, the students will choose. Not only students, as consumers, for example, you and me, as consumers, when we go to a supermarket, what do? We look for the quality, we look for the quantity, and we look for the price, and then we choose. We don't simply buy something or the other just because of the brand value. Value for money is more important. Similarly, the students also are going to give attach importance to the teaching and learning, whichever is useful to him. So artificial intelligence has already entered into the classroom, whether we like it or not. And that doesn't mean that a teacher is going to be replaced. A teacher has always been there, in spite of open university system, in spite of what we call ODL, open distance learning system, in spite of online teaching, in spite of all the innovations taking place in the field of teaching and learning, teacher's role is still there. A teacher is, I should say, indispensable. But which teacher is indispensable? A teacher who is going to give some useful information to the student. The student has to find the teacher useful, only then the teacher finds himself relevant. So her question is, how can we make a mark, especially in the age of artificial intelligence? Now, each one of us, if we are innovative in the classroom, instead of, if a teacher is merely an agent of transmitting information from a textbook to student, he is not going to pay attention to you, because he can always understand that he can read the textbook instead of listening to you. So artificial, we can as well contribute to artificial intelligence in the form of content writing, in the form of online information. So directly we may not be able to contribute to artificial intelligence, but indirectly, by means of sharing content, innovation of teaching, we can make a mark. We can leave a mark, especially in the age of artificial intelligence too. Because especially when open learning system started, open university system has started, people were apprehensive that conventional teaching will be done away with. But no, it has not been done away with. These are all only supplementary. Artificial intelligence also may be supplementary in future. Does that answer? I hope it answers Sharmila Deshmukh's question. Another question from Ausik is, what can a teacher do to improve innovation skills in students? You see, the problem is we are governed by a motto called Guru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Matru Devo Bhava. These three divinities are there. First, Matru Devo Bhava, which means we should not question the mother. Mother is divine. We should not question the mother. And then Guru Deva Bhava, teacher is divine. Whatever he teaches is divine. He is a divine figure. Therefore, you should not undermine him. You should not question him. Acharya Deva Bhava, Pitru Deva Bhava. So you see, we are governed by this mode of not inculcating questioning spirit. When you consider teacher as a divine, you don't question him. That's the problem. Right from school, in the schools, if you remember, in the schools that I studied, for example, if a student opens his mouth, teacher would immediately say, "Shut up, you idiot, don't speak, don't make noise." A best class is one in which you maintain pin drop silence. There's a concept called pin drop silence in India. A teacher who maintains pin drop silence, in my view, is the worst teacher, bad teacher. The best teacher is one where there is a lot of noise in the classroom. Students have to speak, interact, talk, ask, question. That is the best class. So we are now governed by these modes of pin drop silence, or seeing teacher as a divinity, as a result of which we have not inculcated questioning spirit. Once just as you know, when we were all children, we used to ask questions. We used to ask the parents plenty of questions about stars, moon, sky, whatnot. The child will not be tired at all. The mother will be tired, father will be tired. And same is the way the teacher should be tired. Such should be the case of allowing the student to question. Once you allow the student to question, sky is the limit. Innovation automatically takes place. I think that answers.
Yes, sir. Venkateshwar Rao has asked a question: how to improve our patent tally?
Yeah. Venkateshwar Rao asked a question: how to improve patents tally? Now, research. If you are a doctorate, you know I am a doctorate. We know how we all have done the doctorate. Now, once again, if we give I'll give the example of a school. In the schools, in urban schools, especially English medium schools, there is a concept called project work, homework and project work. Right from LKG onwards, teachers give homework, students come home, and then honestly speaking, who does the homework? Tell me. More than the student, it is the mother who does the homework. It is not homework, I should call it mother's work and father's work. Father is hardly available at home, so mother's work. After homework at advanced 5th class or 10th class, projects are given. Who does the project, you tell me? Once again, it's the parents. Elder brother, elder sister, and parents. And let me also make it very clear, in the engineering college also there are project works. In the final year, 4th year, there is hardly any paper teaching, it's only project. Who does the project, honestly speaking, you tell me? Because it's beyond mother's capacity, beyond father's capacity, beyond students' capacity. Who does the project work? As far as Telangana is concerned, project works are done in Amirpet. There are now
an outsourcing agency.
Outsourcing agency. There are commercial shops or institutes where a BTech student goes and buys a project for 5,000 and submits the project. Now you tell me how to add to patent tally. The problem is, we in Indian institutions expect more from the students. First of all, we should not expect more from the students. Whatever student can do should be considered original. Even if it is very commonplace thing, even if it is very, very simple, let him do it originally instead of downloading from internet, instead of buying a project work from city or outsourcing company, or instead of getting a PhD thesis, ghost written PhD thesis. Let us make our project on our own, however simple it may be. First of all, institutions should learn to accept the project, homework, whatever, even if it is simple. Number two, the students should be allowed to work on their own. Only then there will be some innovation. Otherwise, as long as we expect perfection from students, the perfection is available commercially in the shops, and students buy the project work from the commercial shops. So as long as the best is expected, as long as perfection is expected, we won't add to tally. And then as long as we don't do on our own, we don't add to the tally, patent tally. Patent tally starts improving when we start doing on our own, even if it is a modest addition. Modest addition, which is original, is important than great addition. So that's how I think we have to make a modest beginning.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable thoughts and time. Today, sir has spoken on pedagogy, and sir has explained various aspects of pedagogical concerns, and also how there is a need of changing from teacher-centered methods to learner-centered methodology. And sir has raised many questions about the contemporary education system and the need of quality research. And sir has touched upon various aspects of education and philosophical foundations in the light of NPE 2021. And sir also mentioned about the committees, how Kothari has given his wonderful remarks about the Indian education system. The destiny of the nation is now being shaped in the four walls of the classroom. As Kothari said, teachers are the framers of the nation. Hope Professor Purushottam sir's ideas become true. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable ideas, thoughts, and your time. On behalf of OUCIP, I convey my heartfelt gratitude to you, sir, for accepting our invitation to deliver the lecture. Thank you, one and all. Thank you all for taking an active part in the lecture series conducted by the OUCIP. Thank you.